Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. I hope you guys have been having a beautiful weekend. I'm on here because they were really guiding me to come on here. So I feel like there's things that are going to try and flow out. And when I tried to structure them, like, here's what I'm going to talk about, here's what I need to share, here's these messages, it wasn't working, which kind of leads me into a bit of what I'm going to talk about today, which is this divine feminine versus divine masculine initiations, what they look like, what those polarities are. I've been getting a lot of questions about it on TikTok. So if you're here from TikTok, know that these videos sometimes are just channeled messages. They're just downloads that I get from my guides. Sometimes we do tarot readings. Every single time we, are really connecting about the spiritual journey, the path as light workers. And for most of us here, we are twin flames. Okay? Cool. So, divine feminine initiation. It has to go first. It has to lead before the divine masculine initiation. Most of us, however, are born into a world where we are taught that we must achieve. In school, right away, we are pit against each other, essentially. It's competitive. We're taught principles like it's a dog-eat-dog world. You must succeed. And if you don't, some of us may have had parents that if we didn't get an A and if we didn't succeed and do well, then there would be repercussions. And it was like there was conditional love placed on us. And we didn't understand it as that. As humans, we don't understand it as, oh, if I don't get an A, then I won't be loved. But there is a oh my God. Woo! Welcome! Mercury's almost in retrograde, so I'm gonna blame it on that. But there was this sort of expectation put on us, and whether it was from our parents or not, it was from the society and the culture around us, wherever you grew up, because, I'm sure there's some places in the world where they have, been able to ward this off, but for the most part, in societies and cultures that are westernized, this was kind of what we were fed, what we were given. And so that teaches us to, we learn very quickly that when we listen to our intuition or we honor the instinct, that's wrong, that's bad. As little kids, you may have had this desire to go and play outside and not do your homework or whatever. And that was kind of beaten out of you. And I don't mean literally. For some, that could be the case. I don't mean literally. But it was, ingrained over and over again. When I share my feelings, when I cry, when this happens, this then happens afterwards. So it gets us into this conditioning where we must achieve and we must hide parts of ourselves. Okay, we must put parts of ourselves down, lock it in a box, and throw away the key. And that's only safe. It's just not safe to share that with people. And so we kind of are forced into masculine programming, masculine conditioning out in the world, which I would call it the distorted masculine, which is very much around, let's think of a good way to explain this, a good analogy. If I'm succeeding, it means someone else is not, right? It's not an all for one attitude. It's only one person can get this job. So who's the best? Who's the most cunning? Who can, it's kind of that, like, whoever's on top, it's a survival of the fittest attitude. Whoever's on top, therefore deserves. And if you're on the bottom, well, sorry, you're on the bottom, so you don't deserve. Whereas when we're connected to the divine feminine principle, we recognize that it's an all for one and a one for all. When I succeed, you succeed. It's that idea of, we're only as strong as our weakest link, right? So there are some of these divine principles that have tried to kind of leak out, but for the most part, we're all operating from a distorted masculine, unless we are on a spiritual journey, and then we kind of are thrust into learning some of these lessons in the hard way at times. So we have this distorted sense of masculine. Some people can achieve a lot with this. They can achieve a lot in the 3D. They can achieve money and wealth because, they didn't always go about it with the most integrity. And perhaps it's not even just integrity, like they were jerks to people, but perhaps sometimes it's that they weren't in integrity with themselves. They were continuing to do things that didn't bring them that much joy, or they were continuing to feed into unhealthy relationships, unhealthy patterns, unhealthy habits. You know, this distorted masculine energy that is really thrust upon us is why people can achieve everything that they've ever thought that they wanted. And then once they get it, they're like, okay, but I'm still unhappy. Now what? So it's that kind of understanding where that's when we have to go deeper. That's when we have to seek inward. And when we go inward, we can't heal the masculine until we heal the feminine. And oftentimes that is the thing that is resisted the most, because the feminine is a dark void space. It is very scary in the beginning. The feminine asks us to sit still and to not do anything and to allow everything to come to us, to trust. The feminine requires a deep trust. It requires us to face our shadow. It requires us to face the fear of death. With everything that's gone on in the world in the past couple years, we have all been asked to face our fears and face death, the deep shadow. It is why so many people have begun to awaken. A lot of people have been stuck in their fear, but many have begun to awaken. And the reasoning for that is because they've had to face their fear of death very, very head on. The feminine does not fear death. The feminine is death. The feminine is death, rebirth. Okay? There is no fear of the darkness because of the depth of faith and the intuition, which are the pillars of feminine energy. A lot of people think that they have a connection to their gut, to their intuition, but most have learned to bypass that and think in their head. The intuition does not ever live in the head. Okay? You may be clairaudient, you may hear, but that's a very deep sort of advanced connection that not all have, and you certainly don't have that ability right away. So this is something I've encountered with a lot of divine masculines, is they believe they're listening to their intuition, but they're not, because they've actually been so programmed by society, by conditioning, to bypass their intuition, to get into their head, and to think that their head, which is the fear, I'm protecting you from this thing. Ego and fear, it's always connected, and it's always about protecting you from something. Okay, something in the past, when I was a child and I shared my feelings, I got hurt. You know, when I cared about somebody so deeply, I got hurt. Therefore, danger, must avoid. Okay, so we can live our lives avoiding the signs, the synchronicities, which is always that feminine connection, which is your intuition. We can avoid that for a long time. I mean, people can be on a path of avoiding that. And I mean, they could be getting beat the fuck up by life. And what I mean by that is like the signs, the synchronicities, when we're not on our path, your guide spirit will work super hard to try and wake you up and to get you on that path. And sometimes it's very painful. This is what we might describe as tower moments. So illness can be a huge indication. Disasters, accidents, car accidents. I know when I wasn't on my path, my car got towed like a million times. I mean, not a million times, but it got towed like 2 times in a month. I always had parking tickets. There was always these things that were going to trigger me deeply, right? So each person's different. So some people might not get triggered by something like a parking ticket. That's not a big deal. But for me at that time, it was a very big deal. So, and anything to do with my car and my transportation really stressed me out, because that was a part of my like 3D like safety. I need to be able to drive places. I need to be able to get places, you know? So for me, it was that. For many, it's body, it's illness, it's weird issues, you know? It's just pain in their body, like all kinds of things that come on, and it just persists and it just persists. Accidents where we get hurt, really badly hurt, you know, and we have to go to the hospital, or we have to get surgery, or, you know, things like this. These are all things that are placed on the path. And those are really extreme cases. And those come along when we haven't been listening to the subtleties of the signs and the synchronicities. Because the not feeling good is enough of a sign. If you don't feel good, okay, and there's a difference between feeling good and then being in the ego fear of like, ooh, this is uncomfortable, I want to run from this. Those are two different things. When you have a feminine initiation, you begin to wake up and recognize and discern what one and the other is so that you can actually really be connected. But there's this awareness of the fear that's moving you away from something versus an overall feeling of being unsettled, being uncomfortable. When I'm with this person, I immediately don't feel good about myself. When I'm with this person, I immediately feel like I'm on defense. When I'm at this job, when I'm in this situation, I immediately don't feel good. That's what I mean. I hope that was a good enough example to kind of explain the difference between the ego fear that's like, oh, we want to run away from this because this is uncomfortable, versus the every time I'm around this person, shit goes wrong. It feels like my life started falling apart the second that I was around this person. And I know that can get very confusing because as I say that out loud, I think about the twin flame journey where your life sort of falls apart. But it falls apart in a very different way. It crumbles. Anything that was false, anything that was a projection, anything that was built on shit falls away so that you can build something more whole. But disasters, body pain, some of the things that I've mentioned, like the things that are very key indicators of being out of alignment, that's a totally different category. So some of us get thrust onto this path because we haven't been listening to the intuition, because we have no connection to our faith, and we get really triggered by something, and everyone in the world recently was really triggered by this fear of death. And so it called us to go inward. It called us to face that shadow, whether we wanted to or not. A lot of us came out the other side and had a feminine initiation. So some of the principles of a feminine initiation is having to be still. So being moved into stillness, when a lot of us were quarantined, couldn't leave our house, weren't encouraged to socialize. We had to disconnect from everything, not go to work, right? The feminine principle is not, the feminine energy is not out there achieving, working, all that, not in that creator mode, okay? The feminine is in stillness. The feminine is quiet. The feminine is in a dark room alone. It's a solitude. It's an inward journey. You can only take that journey inward and by yourself. Some things that happen is, the quiet, the stillness. Things fall away. You lose people, you lose jobs. Things that were the structures, the foundations, like I said, fall away during this initiation. For some, money is a big part of it. It's learning through sometimes pain points that you are always provided for, you were always taken care of, you were always safe. And in order to learn that lesson, many of us have to lose our job, lose our income, get our bank accounts to the point of zero. And then see that we didn't die, that experience didn't kill us. Maybe it was a rebirth, there was maybe a death or a rebirth, but we survived that. We always had what we needed. One of the biggest things I learned in my feminine initiation, which was prior to the twin flame journey for me. So I had my divine feminine sort of initiation prior to meeting my twin and being on that journey. So I'll share some things that came up for me, and that might help us understand it a little bit more, because it is complex and I do feel like I'm all over the place. I hope this is making sense. I'd love to hear from you if it is. But I'm just kind of channeling and letting it flow so that hopefully it can make sense and you can perhaps see, maybe you've been through a divine feminine initiation and you're wondering about the masculine initiation. What does that look like? Have I been through that? Maybe you are trying to, as you're listening, you're like, oh, I wonder if my masculine has gone through this. I don't know. However you want to be learning from this information. So hopefully it's making sense. Please let me know if it's not. And I'll share a bit about what occurred for me during my feminine initiation. So every path that I'd been on, every project I was working on, all the things that I was creating came to a screeching halt. The inspiration ran dry. I was very, very confused on which direction to go next. I didn't know where to go. And there was deep fear. And I immediately went into kind of the hamster on the wheel mode. Must save this. I must find a job, because the job, I had no money. I had no income. So nothing was coming through. I had no abundance. I had no ideas, no new people, no new energy. I was in a relationship that was very unhealthy, and everything kind of dried up. I knew I needed to get away from that relationship. So I got away from that relationship, and I got into a place of stillness and quiet. I isolated myself. It wasn't necessarily my desire to be isolated at the beginning, because at the beginning of a feminine initiation, I feel like there's a lot of kicking and screaming. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of pain. So the ego immediately goes into hyperdrive. Well, let's fix this. Let's go get us a job. Okay, well, let's try and make this happen. And it's that masculine energy, but it's distorted because it's not healed yet. So it kicks in like, okay, well, let me apply for this job. Let me apply for all these jobs. Okay, let me go on all these dating apps. Let me go meet new people. Okay, it goes into the doing, right? It goes into, because masculine it wants to be active. Masculine wants to be useful. Masculine wants to be in this doing energy, okay? Like, okay, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to be on hypervigilant, like fix, okay? And so my masculine went into overdrive during that time. But the divine, my guides, literally took every possible thing away from me, where it just kept getting harder and harder. The more that I resist, the more that I tried, the more that I went into this panic mode, the more that I just tried to make shit happen in my life. It just became clearer and clearer. Nothing is going to happen. So my only option was to surrender. And surrender is not like a clean thing. Surrender doesn't look pretty. Surrender, the word kind of sounds beautiful. It has this high frequency and vibration to it, but surrender actually looks like dark night of the soul, crumbling on your bathroom floor, crying and crying, wanting it to be over, feeling like I shouldn't even be here. What am I doing here? It's ugly. It is ugly, okay? But the feminine loves ugly. The feminine loves the darkness. She is so courageous in facing that shadow. And spirit kind of guides us into facing that shadow, slaying the dragon. And we do that by surrendering to it and allowing it to show us what it needs to show us. I want to mention here, I had a lot of support during this time, okay? I was working with a very, very high frequency spiritual coach. I had people around me that were going through a similar thing. Nobody in my physical vicinity. So kind of similar to COVID, where a lot of us weren't able to be around people physically, but we maybe had support systems online. So I had people that I was speaking to online and a coach, and that was pretty much it. So I was very isolated, very alone. I wasn't making any money, which is so 3D, right? I had no income, and I also didn't know where I was going. There was so much that was unknown. A relationship had ended. I kept being tested with that relationship, with my boundaries with that relationship. That person kept wanting to come back in, kept wanting to manipulate, and I just, I kept having to kind of fight that battle, so to speak, within myself, because my fear was lonely. My fear was sad. My fear wanted to feel held and seen. But there was like something then that I couldn't unsee. It was like, you reach a tipping point, you reach a breaking point where I just can't unsee this anymore, And whatever I had been in the shadow and in the darkness about up to that point, spirit had revealed it to me, and it was like, you can't unsee this. This person, not good for you. This job, not good for you. The path you were on, not good for you. So anytime I deviated and I tried to go back to what I knew, what my ego really wanted, which was that perception of safety, although it wasn't safe, but I perceived it to be safe. Tower moment, okay? So some form of a tower moment. For me, it often happened in relationships. It often happened in the second I would trust this person again, and then they would pull their narcissistic behavior once again, and then I was hurt again. So it was just constantly I just kept having to get burned by the fire. And I want to give like a little caveat here and say, I feel that actually has to occur. we have to get burned by the fire over and over again to learn as humans. Maybe there's some of us out there that don't need that process, and mazel tov to you. I don't know if that's the correct use of that, but I mean, amazing. Like, that's so wonderful that you maybe are that person. But I think for the most part, we have to learn by getting hurt. Have to. And it's like enough times where it occurs, and then we get it. So then what starts to occur after shit hits the fan and your life starts to fall apart and you surrender? Then the intuition turns on. The intuition turns on and you start to get pieces of the puzzle. Maybe not all of the puzzle, but you start to hear guidance. And then there's this process of learning to trust that. Because when you first start getting the guidance, I don't feel like I wasn't listening to it right away. I would hear it and I'd be like, okay, that's cool. But I wasn't acting on it right away. It would take me a long time to act on it. But then when I slowly started to act on it, the trust began to build with the higher power, with the universe, with spirit, with God, with myself, with my intuition. The more I tested, like a science experiment, the more I tested, okay, I get this message. And the signs and synchronicities, maybe this has to be its own separate video, but I feel like most of you, if you're on a twin flame journey, you understand what the signs and synchronicities look like. They're number sequences, they're commonalities, they're synchronicities, they are people, places, things coming up, saying that word to you, seeing this person's name, dreams. So if you, maybe I'll do a separate thing on that, but for now I feel like I'm just going to assume that most of us know what those are. And they also could come in negative, right? Getting hurting yourself all the time, car accidents, all that stuff. So there comes a point where you actually have built this trust and this faith in this higher power. And you recognize, when I listen, things are easier. The resistance goes away when I trust. And it's not always how my ego wants it to be. One of the biggest things Divine Feminine needs to learn is patience. So we can get really ahead of ourselves on this journey. So then it's like, okay, you come into this place of being like, okay, I'm getting all these intuitive insights. Awesome. Okay, let me do this. Okay, cool. Okay, great. Snap my fingers. I should have all my manifestations now, right? We get it now. And they're like, no. Patience. And it's whenever we get back into that distorted masculine, that attachment, that resistance, that hamster on a wheel energy, things get really quiet and silent and still again. Your bank account dwindles, the abundance dries up. Whatever it was that may have been working ends. Because it's a lesson in trust. It's a lesson in faith. You don't move until I tell you to move. You don't give to this until you feel the time is right. You don't act unless you are aligned in your intuition, in your faith, in your trust, in the mystical, in the feminine energy. And the Divine Feminine initiation, I feel, can take a very long time. It can take a very long time. For some, they can be in that place for years. For some, they can, do it in 6 months. It's kind of, no healing is linear. I want to reiterate that. No journey is linear. No two journeys are going to look exactly the same. So what I share about my journey may have happened for you in, pieces. It may not have happened all at once. Like for me, the way it kind of looked is for at least 3 months, I was literally doing nothing. No money. Nothing. By myself. Doing nothing. If you want to know what I was physically doing every day, I was meditating. I was doing yoga. I was learning. I was working with my coach. I was researching. I was in like a deep, deep internal hermit, spiritual, monk-like energy. So it's just take that into account, that no journey is going to look the same. But I am sharing mine to hopefully help. One other thing I want to say about Divine Feminine, both of these initiations, is I feel that the feminine one is more challenging. It can take longer. For those that are in male bodies, their initiation tends to be very, very around a female. So I can't share on that experience or that journey from personal, but I have spoken with men who have talked about their spiritual journey, their spiritual awakening, and for most of them, this is not about sexuality. This, it's more just something around their initiation usually happens from the female energy. And I'm not talking about feminine energy. I'm talking about a woman. So this could be their mother. This could be a relationship. It's usually an intimate romantic relationship that causes them a lot of fear, a lot of triggering, and then that kind of sets them on their path and their awakening. And then they're in their feminine initiation that they were quite literally initiated by a feminine for. And this, I think, for most is going to be around this twin flame journey. Okay, so the feminine energetic twin is going to be initiating that. I feel like that I may have confused that. It's not around gender, okay? So whoever the masculine energetic twin is, they're the one that are going to need to be initiated by a feminine energy. And I don't think I'm going to go into the masculine initiation today because this is already so much. And I'm not even clear if this was clear. So we'll see how this goes. And then perhaps later I will do one about the masculine initiation. One thing about that is it's actually much more simple. The masculine initiation, it's why the feminine leads. We hear this on the twin flame journey a lot. The feminine energy leads. She does, because it's like a whole void space. It's like a darkness. It's like shadowy. It's beautiful. It's magic. It's mystery. It's like in the tarot, the moon card. Okay. So it's all of that. So there's so much in there. There's so much digging. There's so much inner child healing, shadow work. There's a lot of healing that occurs within the feminine. Once you've done that and the most important thing is you've connected to your intuition, you've connected to your trust, your ability to surrender and to know that no matter what, you're going to be okay. And you always have yourself. You always have yourself, and yourself is always connected to spirit, to the divine. Then everything else is easier. Then when you go into the masculine initiation and you are, what is my purpose? How do I create? How do I support myself in a 3D way? Finances, your root system, your home. How do I trust a person? Who do I work with? Who do I create with? That masculine energy. You got it. It's like a walk in the park because you have all of that faith, all of that knowing, all of that healing. You can trust yourself. You can trust your intuition. You can trust in spirit. I mean, a big initiation for me in the masculine was all around money. Just recognizing the less I try, the more abundant I am. The less I attach, the more money comes to me, quite literally, and so that money is a big teacher, I feel like, once we do get into our masculine initiation. But in this feminine one, it's really about establishing this faith and this trust in yourself, listening to the messages and the signs above all else, and releasing any sort of pressure to kind of conform, people pleasing, to ignoring our own inner guidance for the sake of someone else. We have to release that, and that's a big piece of that feminine initiation. And I will say too, I had my very, very big, it was like life before this, life after this. I hadn't lived this way prior to that first feminine initiation, and then after that, it was like I only lived that way. And I had that depth of trust where, let's say shit starts going wrong in my 3D life, as it did at the beginning of my initiation. I may have slight fear that comes up that I have to work through, and I know how to do that because I have the tools to do that. But I don't go into hamster on the wheel. I just go, ooh, this is uncomfortable. I'm not loving that I lost this job, lost this money, whatever's coming up that's causing you the fear. But I also know that I will be guided, that I will be supported, that it will work out better than it was before, because whatever's happening here needs to crumble in order for me to build something better. It's like having that trust and that knowledge. So life prior to that was really stressful. Life after that was, I'm not saying that the stress goes away, but you handle it much better, and you handle it efficiently and quickly. And You're just more integrated in your process. So then if this twin flame journey kind of initiated it even more. So I've had lots of mini feminine initiations since that. And we're constantly going into this period of the void, the darkness. It's cyclical. Life is cyclical. The spiritual journey is cyclical. So we may be on a path if things are going really well, Tower moment. That's just a call for me to go inward. That's just a call for me to go figure out what needs to change, what needs to shift. So that feminine medicine, that feminine wisdom is always going to be with you once you've learned it, once you've learned her, once you've embraced her, once you've called her back into yourself and given her authority in your life. That wisdom and the medicine she shares is always going to be with you now. So you'll know when she's like, you're not watering my garden. you need to get quiet. You need to get still. You need to get by yourself. Because I can still get super into my masculine. Now that my masculine is strong, I love it. I love being in my masculine. I love being project and creation based. Oh my God, I used to be so terrified to look at my finances. I love focusing on my finances and focusing on that stuff now and figuring out like where I'm going, what I'm going to do, right? And then anytime I get too into it, she reins me back in. So they work beautifully together in this balance. But the feminine initiation is the harder piece of it, I would say. And most of us focus a lot on achieving and creating without having that foundation, without having that trust, without having that faith in ourselves, without knowing who we really are, what our intuition is, and having no anchor, no other higher power, higher being, higher presence. A lot of us think we do. Some of us may be religious, some of us may be spiritual, some of us may identify as really believing in something. But when it comes into practice and our life is falling apart, it's the last place we go. It's the last person we turn to. It's our last tool in our tool belt that we even look at. And we kind of saw that in our world, right? The people that had strong connection to their faith, their intuition, their spirituality were like, I'm not afraid. This is nothing to be afraid of. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of loss. I'm not afraid of losing somebody I love because I know that there's a divine higher purpose, that there's a divine timeline. Death is not easy. Rewind, delete. Death is easy. Living is hard. Death is not hard. When we lose somebody, they're free. They teach us how to face our shadow. The lessons of death are not for the dying. The lessons of death are for the living. So this feminine foundation is what supports that. And without that, you have no anchor. Without that, you don't have true spirituality. It's all front. It's fake. And there's a lot of that in the world. Oh, so much of that. That used to irritate and trigger me the most is the fake spiritual people. Okay, I feel like I'm hoping that was a good solid base and that was enough. I really have no idea what I said, but spirit guided. And back when I started this video and I tried to have more structure, I was going to have notes. I was going to be like, here's the points I want to hit. It was not working. It was not flowing because I was in distorted masculine. I was trying to be logical and analytical and make it work and in my head. And spirit was like, no, we'll guide you. We got you, boo-boo. Just hit record, see what happens. And the messages that are meant to hit are going to hit and they're going to be understood because I'm supported and I'm connected to that feminine energy, which is the mystical, it's the unseen, it's the unknown, it's not tangible. We don't know how it quite works. We can't measure it. And that is how I live my life now. However, one thing I will say before I wrap this up, there are many, and this can be a very divine feminine thing. So if you are a divine feminine, there are many divine feminines that are in distorted feminine, where they only live in the 5D, they only live in the mystical, and they don't know how to get their masculine energy to work for them. So they struggle with money, they struggle with purpose, they struggle with boundaries, they struggle with speaking their truth, they struggle with cutting people out of their life if they need to, they struggle with saying no. Okay, so that is kind of the next phase, which is which is the masculine initiation, where you can go in and heal that. And it's why on the twin flame journey, if we were to just isolate that, it's why the feminines, I don't want to say the feminines have an easier time, because there's a lot you have to learn, but the feminines are the leaders, and the feminines tend to get it quicker. The feminines tend to ascend a little bit quicker than the masculines because of that connection to their intuition, the true intuition, and their connection to spirit. They have that, and this journey forces them to deepen their relationship with that and go deeper than they ever thought possible. I mean, I thought I had a deep connection with spirit prior to my twin flame journey. I really did. But oh my god, it was on such an unsolid foundation. It was wobbly, to say the least. And this journey made it so strong. So strong. Right? So the feminines are kind of set up because some of you have already maybe had a bit of a feminine initiation, maybe not a full one. And mostly what you're here to learn are the masculine. You're initiated by your masculine, okay? So you're initiated to learn all of those self-worth pieces around saying no, boundaries, money, creation, your purpose, being on mission, service, all of that beautiful, all of those beautiful things. Yeah. So stay tuned. I will definitely create a video that is supportive around the masculine initiation, but I would love to know if any questions have sprouted from this. If I wasn't clear on something, if something was a bit confusing, or if you got me, you were with me, you're like, yep, I've experienced that. What's next? I would love to hear. So let me know. If you need support on this journey, that is what I do. So if you are looking for a coach and you are looking for somebody that can support you as you walk this path, that is my bread and butter. That is what I love to do. That is my reason for being. And that was the path I was on even prior to the twin flame journey. And the journey just kind of deepened the wisdom and deepened the ability to serve. So I think that's it for now. I hope you guys have a beautiful Sunday. It is 12:22 on my clock, so I have the beautiful 222 message. Stay open, stay awake, listen to those messages, those synchronicities, those the guideposts of your intuition. Listen to your feelings, your emotion, not your head. If you feel uncomfortable, if you don't feel good, that's a message. If you feel fucking incredible, but it's scary, that's a message too. That's what tends to happen with the masculines. They're like, I feel too good and I don't know how to trust this because I don't have my feminine connection. I don't have an initiation. I haven't gone through that. I don't have that deep faith in that. So, okay. Sending you guys a lot of love, a lot of strength. Thank you so much for being here. If this message was helpful, please like, please share. Please support this channel in any way you can, and I'll be back.